Hi, everyone. Um, is everyone on? I'm just seeing, oops, you. There we go. Just going to get a gallery view going. So these are always, I know, exciting and rich and soulful conversations. Um, and so what I'm going to do now is ask each facilitator to briefly report back really what you heard shared. Any highlights, and nothing makes people feel more loved than when they feel they've been seen and heard. And so where love is a big part of what we're trying to create as we fight social injustice, I want to gently guide you towards trying to share what you heard and report on what you heard people saying versus an interpretation. That's what I'm suggesting. So, um, uh, Bailey, may I call on you first?
Sure.
It's good to
Uh,
see you again. You
Thank
were,
you. Likewise.
thank you.
Yeah, I've been super busy, but I'm so happy to do this. This is my self-care on Friday. So I had an awesome group, and I'm sure you all can say the same. It was very rich, and there were similarities in um, the the way we received the importance of advocacy and empowerment. We shared themes of the importance of mindfulness and the importance of like being in the fixer role and navigating in this instinctive fixer place to understand how to move to a place of advocacy. And I love what one of our participants said in our group, which was, really making sure that you're getting to a place of empowerment so that there is a high level of self-sufficiency for people and you're not taking their voice, and you're truly being mindful of what they need, and how you can be the best assistance for them. And there was a lot around not just self-sufficiency for who you're advocating for and who you're empowering, but also for yourself, and making sure that when you're in this role that you get to a place of um, prioritizing yourself so that the work that you're doing is restorative and you're not depleting your energy completely, and you're moving forth in a place of compassion, which you can like stay engaged in someone else's well-being, but um, not necessarily depleting from oneself. And we closed with the topic of advocating in a place of the identity gap. And we were talking about when you have to decide when to take a front seat in that type of situation. And there was a collective understanding that sometimes it's really important to stand in that space when there's no one else standing in that space for someone else. But we use this great analogy of a drawbridge because we've observed through social media in these times that things have been getting very tense and people are burning bridges. But instead of burning bridges, maybe use a drawbridge to lift it up and contain yourself and protect yourself when needed so that you can restore, and so that that bridge is not completely destroyed and there's still a pathway for healing.
Wonderful metaphor. Wonderful metaphor. Thank you. Thank you, Bailey. Also, I meant to say, if you heard a anecdote or a story, you don't have to tell the whole story, but maybe sometimes I'm aware that these great stories come out in a group that really exemplify something that would be worth sharing to, something you heard that moved you. I have a dog that's just come home, and I will mute myself, but I'm listening. So Jerome, would you share with us?
Absolutely. So I would say if Bailey had an awesome team, I had an awesomest team. So, and a very good discussion, a lot of positiveness. We were actually all scientists in our group. And I think the discussion was very interesting because it started from perhaps a common ground of also recognizing that, in our environment, of science, we are not trained to be emotional. We are trained to be logical, right? And so this involvement of the emotion is quite a step forward in the first place. So I like this idea that was brought up because, of course, depending of your own profession and your own background, you may not realize or may not feel comfortable to immediately use empathy. But I think it was quickly recognized that by standing into the emotional dimension and the emotional realm, you can help people much more than basically staying at a relatively, dry stage. And also, when you do get the emotion, when you do make those emotional connection, it is a better path for everybody because everybody feel more relaxed, more even relaxed, more open, more willing to actually share, explain, express, and grow. And so then we moved into the idea that by being an example of someone who is focused on solution solving rather than problems, it generates a dynamic of positiveness. And by that, essentially, again, this empowerment through perhaps this emotional connection with people attract a lot of, again, students, because people see you as taking the high road by focusing on, again, solution rather than problem, and also generate a lot of, as I say, people see as almost like a model or something like this. And we also had a very good discussion on what does advocacy mean. And I very much like this idea because the idea was that being involved in advocacy doesn't mean that you need to necessarily register to some advocacy group or be, have like a title or do something very special. Sometimes advocacy is as simple as supporting youth. Be a role model, show them, through your advocacy or your teaching that there is a way out from where they are. Lead by example. Try to be, again, this role model that people turn to and see, oh, this is, I can be a teacher. I can be a problem solver. I can be in an environment where there are only a few positive people that give me a voice and that allows me to go forward, which was also another concept that we had, is that sometimes in an environment, you can have a lot of negative people, but you can have one person that empowers you and say, oh, Jan, can you tell us about this? What is your opinion about that? And suddenly you feel empowered and you feel brought in and you feel that, yes, I can, in a sense. And again, this idea that it doesn't need to be well-defined and structured. It has to come, advocacy has to come first from the heart and from the emotion. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and I felt like we could have had probably an hour more because there was a lot of connection also within our group. So thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you. I'll go boy, girl, I guess. I think. Do we have another Ariana, your support, correct? Were you great? No, you're not a facilitator. Great. So then I will go to Dr. Clifton, because you're right there on my screen in front
Right,
of
yeah,
me.
we're directly ahead. We had a discussion that really stayed on compassion, empathy, valuing what we do as an advocate, and also recognizing the great deal of frustration that can come from it. And then people were willing to share situations where they found themselves in opposition to their goal, feeling opposition to themselves, and we shared stories and situations where we were learning to carry the oppositions and to find how both sides could be served. I mean, not every advocacy situation is trying to talk somebody into something, but we were mostly sharing situations where we were hitting resistances, and that we didn't want to fight the resistance. We wanted to unite the the, the two sides and find that which could honor both sides. And people were happy to share that. And people also shared how frustrating it can be uh, with these situations, and that we need uh, escapes at times. You know, we may have to walk out of a meeting, or walk out, or take a time off, or go play basketball, or go to a dance, or listen to music, to sort of not lose yourself. Because we talked about in advocacy, we could get so into the circle of the others or other that we lose ourselves. And I think if we can share selves and others, there's a unity that happens, and an energy happens, and a mysterious force comes out of that, because we're not separate people. We're people that develop a real feeling of caring, and people, we stayed on these subjects, and it was quite moving, I thought. And so
Is there a way to share with us? You've referred to so many stories, and I just know the power of story. I'm curious, in 5 sentences, just a very high level. Can you tell us a quick anecdote of one of those stories that just pops to mind that you just heard in your group? And you don't have to name a person, you can just say somebody was in, but you were talking about reconciling, and you were talking about, there was a story of reconciliation, someone trying to help both sides come to reconciling. Is that one of the stories that sticks
well,
out?
yeah, anytime an advocate walks into a room with others that they're trying to advocate for, or with an individual, there's difference. So the stories were around, how do we move from total difference to total identification to honoring each other. So we talked about initially having in our mind two circles that are separate from each other. And as we become more empathetic, the advocate might move in entirely into the circle, and then they're basically lost any kind of objectivity. And so they have to kind of move back out, but create the space where the two circles meet. And where the two
Got
circles
it.
meet, that's where I call that the mandorla, which is like, it looks like an almond. An almond in Italian is mandorla. And so it's in that space that uh, self and other kind of start to blend. And in that blending power, it's almost alchemical, can happen. And and there's an agreement towards the go. Now, the frustration that we all shared is that sometimes this takes a long time, and sometimes we don't have a long time to heal in a situation where we talked about an advocacy situation where
Yes,
this person was
yes.
being threatened, and we could have advocated for a long time, and the person could have been dead, and we couldn't get involved with the police or something. So we had some friendly neighbors, big friendly neighbors, talk to this situation, and it resolved itself very quickly and happily on all sides. Then then the whole group was able to move towards, you know, moving towards what the group face wants. And so without being too specific, you know, sometimes you have to take very direct actions and stand up what's, you know, that's not just right, that's it's the safe way to go. And the other time it takes a while for the resistance to meld together and find the common ground each side.
Yes, it calls on great patience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. Thank you. Thank you for that. Shaw?
Hi, thank
Hi.
you. Yeah, so we had a really great group. Jan, you were a part of it, so maybe afterwards you can add on as well. Um, but yeah, we started off talking about how empathy is a blessing and sometimes it can be a curse at times too. Meaning that sometimes we get cut off from our own empathy. We start to make assumptions about others, and then it comes back to bother us. And really, the key is just being able to start a conversation first. And the goal ultimately should be being able to advocate for others who you might have made some assumptions about, right? We had a little back and forth in our group where I shared a story where, you know, sometimes men, they call women darling, hey darling, oh, it's okay darling, and things of that sort. And I remember uh, in the medical field in the hospitals, we were given seminars about this and said, hey, please be careful how you talk to a woman. And so the one female in our group agreed with that. And interestingly, one of the males said, hey, you know, I actually say honey to so many girls, so many women, and I don't really mean anything by it. It's not meant to offend them. And so the interesting contrast with that was that sometimes we say things, but we don't feel any harm by it. But to somebody else, they feel offended. And we have to be understanding of that. And at times, we have to let go of our ego. We have to stop the need to feel that we have to be right all the time. That's a big problem, too. And we have to try to understand what people are going through and realize it's okay to disagree as long as we are hearing the other side. The key is not to be offensive and also willing to listen, hearing their side of the story, because the truth is in a lot of these situations, everyone has stories. And we heard two, you know, to me, they were just shocking stories where there were missed opportunities from people in our groups that I consider such great advocates, you know, for connecting the dots. And the first story was in a business meeting. Uh, it was a business meeting full of, you know, mostly white women and I think one Asian woman. And somebody said that, oh, the leader, this other leader, her hair was all messed up and she didn't look well prepared. And you know, and the woman was talking about a black woman, and our advocate at that time didn't say anything, but she felt that that was a great opportunity to say something in the future. So that was one example that sometimes in meetings these things are said, but we don't say anything. And the second example, in a classroom setting where uh, a teacher was teaching and the kids, they wouldn't even look at the teacher when they would raise their hands just to be offensive. And you know, it's shocking that the things that we go through and we have these things that we see in life, but we just let them slide. And I feel that there are a lot of missed opportunities that people are sharing with us now that we can all take advantage of. And even the strongest amongst us, we've been through these things. And sometimes we see things that we know are wrong, but we choose to stay quiet. And it's important for us at those moments to advocate for others because it can really make a difference in our daily lives. This way, at least we don't have to be comfortable. This way, we don't have to be uncomfortable in situations going forward. This way, the hope is that these situations don't occur over and over and over again. So, uh, lastly, just these are all teaching opportunities, and we all need to take advantage of them. Thank you.
what I love is that that's all of our groups, correct? Is that all of our
Correct.
facilitators?
Yep.
Great, thank you, Melanie. It's always interesting to me to hear, you know, common themes where we've never, first of all, it's always interesting to hear the level of intimacy, you know, that's developed because some of us have been together, but some of us are brand new here. And that there's a trust and that this work is so important to us and we're so hungry for answers that we're willing to put down our guard and be vulnerable and open is always moving and always a beautiful thing to see here. And I'm grateful for this safe space in order to share that. I hear words and themes that are common amongst all of us, even though we all look and are so different. I'm hearing words like emotional connection. Connection was a huge word, and emotional connection. I'm hearing empowerment. I'm hearing compassion. I'm hearing frustration, and I'm going to say patience because I'm hearing that underneath. We all use the word empathy a lot and we use the word advocacy a lot, but that's the theme here, right? And so out of that, there seem to be a number of values and words and actions that are common amongst all of us. I'm moved by that. And I think this last piece that is also, I'm really hearing and know, is this reporting of being a witness, that we are all in this world witnessing, either self-witnessing, we are either the object of something discriminating or biased or limiting in another person's eyes, where they're experiencing it, or we're seeing someone else experience that. And I'm hearing a growing yearning for not just seeing things and letting them slide, but finding a way to take a stand. I'm hearing people saying that some of us are choosing formal ways to take a stand, and some of us are taking a stand by modeling or speaking up or in our own behavior. And I hope that for you, there is a sense of hope and solidarity just in that, because it's certainly what I'm feeling. And so I wish that for you. And the other thing that I thought was unique and so important, so I want to highlight it, is going back to what Dr. Clifton talked about. I can barely see people's names. I'm working with 4 eyes and I can't see everything. So what I'm seeing Dr. Clifton speak about, and then also Bailey, what you spoke about at the very first report out, which is about this level of frustration, and I'll call it battle fatigue, and the need for self-care. And the need, someone else talked about boundaries. Yes, and you need self-care too, Luca. Luca needs self-care and my care. He's begging, my dog is begging for attention. But that while we are standing up and encouraging the voice of others, that maybe it's time for us to just take a pause, to pause our voice, to pause our energy, and to find that quiet place inside of us or outside of us and recharge. And so on a weekend, it seems like that's a great place to pause here, and wish you all a weekend where you at least find a moment of grace and some self-love so that you can advocate for yourself and advocate for others.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jan.
You're welcome.
I was like